Okay, this is going to be a short video to try and explain the tactical movement within the Rolemaster RMU system by Iron Crown Enterprises. I'm using Foundry virtual tabletop here as a visual guide to what we're going to go through, and using the official Rolemaster RMU modules by BobM, which are well worth spending the money on to make your life a lot easier running what can be a quite intensive system for the GM to run with a lot of tables, etc., which is all automated within this Foundry modules. So movement in Rolemaster. So to start with, you have to understand that every character, every monster, every creature in Rolemaster has a base movement rate. So for this character here, Azem, his base movement rate is 23 foot around. So he can move at a walk pace and walk up to 23 foot each 5-second combat round. Also, in addition to the base movement rate, a character can move at different paces from creep through to dash, even though the pace can be restricted by the amount of equipment that the character is carrying compared to what their weight is. In which case, for Azem, this character, you can see dash is grayed out, which basically means that due to the 46.5 pounds of equipment that he's carrying, he's unable to go at the 5 times dash pace, but he can do up to sprint, which is 4 times his base movement rate. So movement within the tactical situation in Rolemaster, within sort of an encounter, can happen in 2 ways. You can either do what we call action point movement, where you can spend action points, of which there are 4 in each round, to move a certain amount of distance based on the pace you wish to move at. So if we look at the carrot sheet again, if Azem wanted to move at a walk pace, he could walk 23 foot and it would cost him 1 action point to do that. If he wanted to go at a jog pace, which is times 2 his base movement rate, it will be 2 APs, and a run pace, which will be 3 APs, and a sprint, which would be 4 action points. Now, as you can understand, there's only 4 action points in a round, so if a character used all his action points to move, he would not be able to do any other actions. Additionally, there is a move as you act system as well, where a character or creature or monster can be performing an action. For example, a full attack action is 4 action points. So a character, as I'm here in this example, could be in the process of spending his action points to do a full attack, and he could move at the same time. Now, when he does so, he can move in each of the 4 phases with this pace. So he could walk 5.75 feet per phase, and if he does so, the action he performs will be at -25. So over those 4 phases, whichever phase he is traveling, he's moving the fastest at the highest pace, that is the penalty that applies to the action. You don't add the penalties up from the various phases, you just take whichever is the highest. So for example, if we look at this example here, where Azem is facing off to a demon, he could opt to move forward in using action points. He could move 23 foot. So as you can see, he could move 23 foot and he wouldn't be in range. So clearly, using 1 AP, he couldn't get into range of the demon to attack. So if we take him back there, by the way, just an easy action, Control Z when you're targeting the token will go back on the last movement that they did. So let's say instead he wants to jog forward, so he can travel 46 feet, which uses 2 action points. So he doesn't need to go to 446, but he can jog close enough to be in range to attack the demon. And because he's had to use 2 action points to travel at a jog pace, he will only have 2 action points left to do his attack. So alternatively, the other method you could use is to do the full 4 action point attack and move at the same time. And in this case, if Azem was to do a 4 AP attack, he could travel at a walk pace 5.75 feet per phase, which in effect would mean if he walked in every phase at a walk pace, he could still travel the 23 feet. But clearly that wouldn't be close enough. That wouldn't be enough to get him close enough to the demon. So he could then jog towards the demon instead. Again, traveling at 11.5 foot per phase, which would mean if he travelled in every single phase, 11.5 foot, he could travel 46 foot. So in this case, is as if Azem jogged forward while attacking, he could attack with 4 APs, which would be no penalty, but he would then get a pace penalty due to having to jog. So if you look at his attack here with the spear, oh, sorry, I need to target someone. So if we look at his attack here with the spear, he would have to use his full APs to attack, but he would have had to jog to get there in time, so he can attack at -50. Now the one advantage a fighter or a martial-like character can have if they use the pace penalty movement is that that pace penalty can then be reduced by the character's footwork skill. So in this case, Azem has a footwork skill of 25, so instead of being a -50 penalty for movement, he would actually only be receiving a -25 penalty. So if I actually make the attack roll, oh wow, okay, this would be quite a deadly attack. So if you look at the card there, he has a skill bonus of 77. He has a pace penalty of -50 due to jogging while he was performing the action, but he's compensating for that by using his footwork skill, which means that 25 of that -50 would actually not apply. So in this case, it's actually more beneficial for Azem to have used that pace penalty movement rather than AP movement, because he cannot reduce the AP penalty. If he's not using enough APs to attack, that cannot be reduced by his footwork skill. So let's just move him back. So other things to consider, you can combine the two, by the way. So you can choose, Azem could choose to do a walk AP move for 23 foot. So he could move forward 23 foot. And then, so he would then have 1 AP less to use for the attack. And then he could choose to follow the remaining 13 foot, say. He could do that movement as he's acting using the pace penalty. So that would mean he would have to walk a walk pace to be able to get that far, which would be -25. So in effect, he would have a -25 for having 1 AP less to use on the attack, and he'd get -25 for traveling at a walk pace while performing the attack. So in effect, but then he could reduce that -25 by his footwork skill. It sounds complicated, but when you actually get around to performing this and practicing this and doing these actions in combat, you will find it's not actually as complicated as it sounds. And another thing to consider is that in some circumstances you might want to make the character or the creature perform a running maneuver, skill maneuver, if they're traveling through difficult terrain. To be honest, it's not something which I would use too frequently, just under certain circumstances where the terrain is extremely rough or rugged or rocky, because otherwise you can really complicate things by making maneuver rolls all the time and potentially reduce the amount of distance they can travel, because obviously the running maneuver at that point will be a percentage skill maneuver. So to be honest, it's not something which I would use too frequently, other than in specific circumstances due to really rough terrain. And I think the last thing to add is just there are certain maneuvers which you can perform while moving, or that involve movement. So charging, if you charge into combat, so if you if you're traveling at either a jog pace or a sprint pace, you can actually increase the size of your attack due to the pace you are running into against an attacker. So in this case, is if a Zem decided to run towards the creature at ×3 pace, he could run in and he would attack with a +1 size to his spear attack, which in effect will give him a +10 bonus and also 1.5 times hits delivered on this strike, as well as increased criticals. One thing to note though, if someone is charging at you and you have a polearm style weapon, a spear, etc., or a polearm, you can set that weapon against the charge, and that attack that you perform against the charger would also have the +1 size modification, obviously increasing the hits and giving the +10 bonus to hit. So that's charging, and then withdrawing, which I covered in my previous video, is where you want to disengage from combat, and that requires you backing away from the target that you're in melee with at the time, and to do so your movement rate is halved, and you can only travel at up to a jog pace. But if you withdraw using that criteria, you can back away from your opponent and they won't be able to attack you in reaction to that if they're currently in the process of delivering an attack against you, and they haven't actually delivered an attack that round. They can attack you as you withdraw unless you back up safely. And just the last thing to note, if you have a combatant trying to move past another combatant to get to either another location or another target, then the target that you're running past or you're moving past has the option to try and prevent you from passing them. So it would be an opposed running maneuver, and if the active mover wins, they can move past that defender, and if the defender wins, then that movement that the attacker is using has to stop at the point where that opposed maneuver occurred. Just to add, even if the person running past the defender succeeds in that opposed maneuver, they are still moving within the combat range of that defending character. And if that defending character is in the process of delivering an attack and has spent at least 1 AP on an attack action, they can react to you moving past and deliver an attack against you. And obviously, if that attack is in an earlier phase than the 4 phases for the full attack, then they'll get their reduced penalty to that attack for not using enough APs. So fundamentally, that's tactical movement within Rolemaster. Like I said, it can be a bit hard to get your head around at times, but hopefully that goes some way to explain movement within combat. Well, thank you for watching.